All right, let's get started. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Kent Branch November educational presentation. Thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Cindy Robichaud. I am part of the Kent Branch operating team and your host for this evening. Welcome to all of you and thank you for joining us. I'm going to turn my camera off now just so that we can focus on the slides. Before we begin tonight's presentation, we wish to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe Nation, and Chatham-Kent specifically is on the territories of the Lenape Nation and the unceded Walpole Island Nation. We do have a bit of housekeeping items. Our presentations are recorded and available on our Kent Branch YouTube channel, which is open to everyone. So feel free to go back and re-watch this wonderful presentation and all the others that we have there. Your microphones and cameras have been turned off, but we welcome your questions. If you hover your mouse near the bottom of your screen, you will see the bar with the chat icon. If you click on it, it will open up. Click on the little arrow that is beside the word everyone and choose the word questions instead. Here you can type your message or questions for us or for the speaker. Elizabeth Beckman is here tonight and she will monitor the chat for us. So let's get started. For anyone joining us for the very first time, let me tell you a bit about Ontario Ancestors. Ontario Ancestors has been preserving and promoting family history for over 50 years. There are more than 30 branches all across Ontario, and Ontario Ancestors is the largest genealogical society in Canada. And there's so much more that we could go into, but we just don't have time tonight. So be sure to check out the website. As I mentioned, the 30 branches, we are one of those branches. We are the Kent Branch. We are located in Chatham, Ontario. We focus mainly on Kent County research and general family history. We offer mentoring, education, and assistance. We host monthly presentations, such as this one, and we have a fantastic resource library. Our Family History Resource Library is located on the second floor of the Chatham-Kent Public Library main branch in Chatham. It holds over 40 years worth of historical and genealogical resources for Chatham-Kent. We are open again to the public on Fridays and Saturdays from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. We always like to connect with people interested in genealogy and local history. You can connect with us at this email. You can also join our Facebook group, which has over 700 people who are interested in genealogy and Chatham-Kent history. We also have a very comprehensive website with lots of resources for both our branch members, but also for the public. So speaking of our website, we have one section that is totally dedicated to providing resources and one-of-a-kind material for our branch members to access at home. This is our members only section that you see here on the screen. As you can see, there are different categories which are jam-packed full of resources, and there's new material being added to these categories all the time. This, I have to say, this is one of the best perks of being a Kent Branch member, especially if you don't live in the area. If you are doing any sort of genealogy or even historical research in Chatham-Kent, and you're not a member of our branch, we ask you the question, why not? Especially now, as our membership campaign just kicked off on November the 1st, and this really is the best time to join the society. There are early bird prizes, and the ever popular Grow Our Family campaign is running again this year. This campaign, if a current member of the Ontario Ancestors brings on a new member to join, both will receive 50% off. So this really is likely less than one dinner out at your favorite restaurant to help support the society. Your membership also makes you part of our team, which is very exciting. So sure, there are lots of perks to becoming a member of the society, such as the educational presentations, and there are a variety of discounts on different services and products and courses. And every single member receives a free MyHeritage Library Edition subscription that you can use at home. But I know for myself, the past couple of years, I've really been focusing less on what my membership can get and more on what my membership can give or do. I like being part of the team that is preserving our history, making things accessible, and provides education and support. So if you're interested in becoming a member of the Ontario Ancestor team, send us an email, please do. December and January are always busy months, and we take a break from hosting our presentations. But we do have one last special event planned for this year with Mark Olson from the Family Tree Maker. Whether you are a Family Tree Maker user or you just want to know more about the software, or whether you are an experienced user or just a beginner, this interactive chat style event is for you. Mark will be joining us from Utah to take questions about using Family Tree Maker. And then the creators of the Charting Companion and the book, Family Bookmaker, will also join Mark to chat. Mark is offering a special discount for every attendee, and he will draw one free copy of the Family Tree Maker at that event. You can register to attend on our website and our Facebook. So we hope you will join us for that very special event. So now let's get to tonight's presentation. Brian Anderson was born in Wallaceburg, Ontario, and is the pastor of the Baptist Church in his hometown. He is married and has 3 children and 2 grandchildren. Brian descends from a number of Kent families, from loyalist to pioneer. His interest in genealogy began at a very early age, but really took off with the passing of some of the older generations in his family. While researching, Brian has discovered some interesting and unusual information, which he will share with us tonight. So welcome, Brian. I'll stop sharing my screen now and I'll turn it over to you. Welcome.
Well, thank you for having me. And I'd like to, first of all, perhaps give a bit of an update on the last time I spoke. I spoke on the Baldoon settlement, and one of my ancestors, Alan Mclean, who in the War of 1812, I had mentioned that he had passed. At the time, I didn't know why he had passed. And, you know, as is always my hope, I like to share where you can find information. And on the archives in Ottawa, I was able to locate through browsing, of course, a lot of their information is hard to find. I was able to locate the pension that was given to his wife. And I was able to secure over 100 documents related to Alan's passing. And so for those who want to know how he passed in the War of 1812, he slipped on the ice and died of wounds he received after slipping on the ice. It's quite the heroic way to go. I'm not sure I want to go the same way, but anyway, I found out that information. Today, I'd like to talk about some of the skeletons we find in the tree, and also a couple of surprises. Every one of our families has skeletons. We all have, you know, seems like you open a door in genealogy and all of a sudden a skeleton will fall out. My family has quite a number of them, and from rum runners, if you go back far enough, my family was involved in the Salem witch trials, except they were on the accusing side. And then I, ended up with some of the ones I'll share today. But we all have these skeletons, and as a genealogist, I've never shied away from looking at them. I think they're interesting. I think there's something our families need to know about, and in the past, often they were hidden, and so never be afraid to uncover them. I think it's a great opportunity to grow, perhaps with your family or just genealogically wise. So without any further ado, I'd like to share with you about my scandals and surprises that I found related to 4 different Kent families that I am connected to. The first one I want to share with you is about my ancestor, George Lampman. On my dad's side, I descend from this man, George Lampman, who lived in Camden, Gore, at one time part of Don Township. And George, just some background for you. He was born in 1806. He, according to his tombstone, which is in Blackburn Cemetery, he was born in Dorsetshire, which obviously they couldn't pronounce, or they couldn't understand how he pronounced Dorset. And so he was born in 1806 in Dorset. And those dates are determined 2 different ways, because I have 2 different dates for his death. If you take the time of his death, on the tombstone, which says February 13th, 1884, and then subtract how many years he lived and, down to the day, you get this August 31st, 1806. Then if you look at his OVS death registry from the Ontario death schedule, he was born, again, looking at the date he died, which is probably closer to being more accurate than the February 13th one, because tombstones were often inscribed later. He would have been born around October 1st, 1806. Now, I find the second one interesting in light of something that I'm going to say, because the issue for us, he was always our brick wall ancestor. We couldn't figure out who he was. And, this George Lampman, is enigmatic to say the least. So as I started researching him, as others in our family were researching him, these dates became very interesting. These between August 31st, 1806 and October 1st, 1806, especially the October 1st one. Here's a picture that I took of the tombstone, the inscriptions on it, and you can see, it's faint. This tombstone's in rough shape. That he died February 13th, and then his age. There's another look at where it says where he was from, a native of Dorsetshire, England. Here's a picture of the OVS, and you can get these on Ancestry. I used to get them off microfilm, and but this is his death registry for 1884 when he passed away. And my second great grandfather was the informant. This is his son-in-law. The earliest record that we have of this George Lampman is a date from 14th of November, 1836. It was found in a letter that he wrote to the Crown Lands Office, and this letter is found in the Township Papers. I don't know if you've had discussion about the township papers at the OGS before, but the township papers are a fantastic place to look. They're now online. Family Search has them online, and however they're browsed, and they're done by concession and lot in the township. So you basically have to browse through it, and that can take some time. However, they're fantastic, and I'll show you why they're fantastic in a minute. Here's an example from the township papers, covering the period 1783 to the 1870s. It's the letter that George Lampman wrote to Papineau, and in it is indicated the date when he first secured land in Don Township at that time, but would become part of Camden, Gore. And it says the 14th of November, 1836. This is the earliest mentioned date anywhere that we have for George Lampman. And that's very important because we have nothing before that. There's nothing ever been found. We could not find any other records. And so what happened is this became a brick wall for us, because in searching in England, we could find absolutely no Lampmans, none. There were Lampins, there were Lamphins, Laphins, all sorts of other weird names, but not one Lampman. And in 1806, when you look at the baptisms, online, and you can't find anything about George Lampman. And so he was a brick wall for us. Well, then came the advent of DNA, and DNA really opened up a lot of possibilities for us for breaking down brick wall ancestors. I've had some success breaking those walls down with various ancestors, and you have to use a lot of triangulation, and I'm sure there's been a lot of talk about DNA. I network with a lot of other people when I work with DNA, especially good researchers. And in this case, one of a relative of mine who's a very strong researcher, as well as a person who understands DNA between the two of us, after a number of us had done tests, the DNA tests at Ancestry and FTDNA and 23andMe, and then uploaded them to other places, we discovered that George Lampman, his line, when triangulated through all these other ways, seemed to point to a descent from a John Hallett and an Elizabeth Gear of Burton Bradstock, Dorset, England, but we couldn't figure out how, at first. But then we started to notice something pretty peculiar, that most of our large matches were coming from a son of theirs by the name of Stephen Hallett. So we thought we need to investigate this Stephen Hallett. Stephen Hallett, so now a very quick timeline for Stephen Hallett. Stephen Hallett was baptized the 2nd of October, 1806 in Burton Bradstock, Dorset, England. Now remember, George Lampman was born somewhere between August 31st and October 1st in Dorset. So this is kind of a coincidental thing, that our largest DNA matches were coming from the connections to this guy's descendants. And I just have a little picture there of the baptismal record, and you may or may not be able to read it, but it says October 2nd, and then Stephen, son of John and Elizabeth Hallett. In 1818, this Stephen Hallett received some money from his grandmother's estate. And these records, you can find on Ancestry. This is part of the wills that you can find, and in it, Stephen is being left some money by his grandmother, and should the executrix die, then he's supposed to get some more money, and so he came into money in 1818. So somewhere between 1818 and 1825, he emigrated to New York State. He married, and I can't say that he actually married her. We can't find his marriage. In fact, George Lampman, we can't find his marriage either. He married Deborah Ann, and some believe her last name was Guernsey. We aren't exactly sure. We know she's a woman by the name of Deborah Ann. He became the father of 6 kids, with his last child being born February 1836. Now, remember, I mentioned George Lampman shows up in November of 1836 in the land records, having purchased land. He was in Toronto and he purchased land that ultimately is in Don Township, which would become Camden, Gore. When he emigrated, he secured land in Monroe, Orange County, and then in Eaton, Madison County between 1830 and 1832. Again, you can find these on Ancestry or on Family Search, some of them, especially the land records, which again, some of them you have to browse, and but we were able to find his land. In 1836, though, we discovered, especially this cousin of mine that is a good, really fantastic researcher. She discovered that he had separated from his wife in 1836 and moved to Augusta, Oneida, New York. And this was found out in the letters of administration, which are on Family Search. And I'll just read just briefly there. Some of you may be having a hard time reading this. It says, the widow of Stephen Hallett, deceased. That said, Stephen Hallett resided previously to the month of September in the year 1836 in the town of Augusta in the county of Oneida, then and previous to such time being the lawful husband of your petitioner. In 1836, however, he left for Upper Canada. And again, this was found on Family Search, and I would encourage you, like, pour through Family Search if you ever get a chance. With your ancestors' names, just keep pouring through stuff. If you know where they live, pour through it, because you'll find stuff like this. In the month of September, aforesaid, Stephen Hallett left your petitioner and went, as your petitioner was informed and believes, to Upper Canada, a province of the Kingdom of Great Britain. So he had left in 1836 for Ontario. In 1836, he also went back to England. His mother died, so he came into some more money. He returns through New York. He brings his brother with him, actually, and they're in the passenger lists. And these again are found on Ancestry, and his mom's death is found in the wills. And so in 1836, he comes back to New York, but heads back to Ontario. According to the probate that his wife in New York went through, the letters of administration, the probate records, the estate records that she filed for, she claims he died in 1837. So she received a letter from him in Michigan, actually, and we found actually a letter she wrote back that was still waiting for him in Detroit, and it might still be there for all we know. But anyway, she received a letter in the spring of 1837, dated from the state of New York, or not New York, Michigan. But she has not heard from of the said Stephen Hallett, except to hear that the said Hallett is now dead, that your petitioner has been informed that the said Stephen Hallett is dead and that he died in Upper Canada. Now, it's amazing what you can find. This Stephen Hallett, who we have the greatest DNA connections to, this Stephen Hallett who, you know, we would never know anything about had we not had the DNA done, and then poured through the records and then found this probate record. This Stephen Hallett mysteriously dies in 1837 in Upper Canada. Again, speaking about his death, that he died in Canada before, at the bottom line there, before September last. So she's claiming that he died before September. Now you remember in 1836, he's securing land in November of 1836. And she's claiming now that he is supposedly died in 1837. The question is, did he? The DNA seems to suggest that George Lampman is Stephen Hallett. If that is true, then George Lampman is a bigamist, or was a bigamist, and had two families on the go. He couldn't handle the one, so he bailed, took off, went to a different county for a while, and then went to Ontario. And then when he got to Ontario, he changed his name, took on a whole new identity. The things that gave him away was the fact that he was born in 1806 in Dorset. Lampman is not an English name. And the records seem to indicate that something mysterious happened to Stephen Hallett. And so we've tentatively come to the conclusion that George Lampman is Stephen Hallett and that he was a bigamist. So that was the first scandal that I came across on a Kent County family member. We all have those secrets in the family that no one talks about. My family was no different. There's a number of scandals in the family that no one ever talked about. I remember, someone spilling the beans somewhere along the way about certain things, and the older generation getting very upset with them, but we had one in my dad's family, and no one ever spoke about it. Meanwhile, there were scandals we did speak about and all knew about, but no one spoke about this scandal, and it was a surprise when we found it. I've entitled it Keough versus Keough. We knew that when my dad's great-grandparents were John and Bridget Keough, and John Keough and Bridget Duffy. And John and Bridget were both born in Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, and they're both good Catholic, people. And but there was this secret that no one talked about. So first, I'd like to give you a little background on each of them. When they were a Kent County family for a while, and ultimately ended up in Sombra Township. And they were in Dover Township for quite a while. In fact, their children, a number of their children were born in Dover Township and then baptized at Pancourt. And but just a little background on John. John was born November 19, 1829 in Wexford County, Ireland. This was found in the Belden Atlas, the historic atlas, for Lambton County, and he obviously was proud of this, and so he paid the whatever the money was, and got his name put in there, along with the fact that he was also at one time a cop in Ireland. He was a former member of the Irish Constabulary, later called the Royal Irish Constabulary, and he was born in Wexford County, and according to the thing, it says he settled in Sombra 1851. Well, that's actually when he emigrated, and but he did settle in Sombra, and basically the date of his birth matches the census. here's his, you can't call it a service record. It's more like an index, kind of a synopsis of his time as an Irish constabulary. And he joined in the about a week after his birthday, when he turned 19. And he joined November of 1847. And then he resigned in 1851. And the reason given was to emigrate. And I don't know if he couldn't cut it. I don't know if something happened because, well, someone was searching for him. And they're in the Boston Pilot, which was a Catholic magazine. You could put ads for people you were looking for. And it's funny that there's a woman looking for him. And John was stationed. You couldn't be stationed in the county of your birth. So he was born in Wexford County, and he was stationed in a county nearby, which was Kilkenny. And you know, he emigrated in 1851 to via New York, and she was now looking for him, trying to find him. John was a farmer. He you know, had a farm and lived out his life on the farm. And but less is known about his wife Bridget. Bridget was born somewhere between 15th of March 1817 all the way through to 1827. The 1817 date comes from the 1901 census. She liked to lie, I think, about her age and stuff, because if you look at the rest of the censuses, they kind of lean towards the 1827 date. So somewhere in there, she was born. She probably arrived in Canada somewhere between 1842 and 1845. And now I mentioned the Irish famine, the potato famine, and I know that 1842 is too early. But the dates they give on the census for when they arrive, I could never find their actual emigration. I can't find the ship list. And so I've based it on what I found in the census, and most likely they came because of the famine. I don't know any more of her family. She seems to have had two brothers that we know of, because they had plots of land right near where the Keoughs were, and their names were Charles Duffy and Dominic Duffy. I found this in the land records in the abstract files. And I used to go to the land registry office and sit there and run through their film. Now you can do this online, and I have an actual link on one of these that shows where you can look and actually look up the abstracts yourself. And they lived right near her. Genetically, however, you know, Charles Duffy claimed he had been born in County Cavan. Genetically, we're connected to a family in the county of Louth by the name of Meath, and we haven't been able to solve that. It's a fairly close connection, just not sure whether it's one generation up, whether there's a birth, you know, one of those mysterious births that all of a sudden changes everything. We're not sure. Bridget died in 1901 in Sombre Township, and this is a copy of her death. In fact, it tells you what concession and lot, you know, concession 8, lot 2, and also I have a little clip there from the Wallsburg News, you know, to the tomb Keough near Lambton on Sunday, September 15th. Bridget Keough, age 82, and so she died in 1901. John Keough died probably in 1893, according to a family member of mine. This is a picture of Bridget Duffy and one of her grandkids. This was found in an old ledger. It was found by a relative of mine, and so they identified the picture as her. And you can tell she's hardy character, and you know, looked like she could be fairly stern. But then the scandal, what's the scandal about? You know, the scandal with Lampman's was that he could have been a bigamist and, you know, hid that from both families. The scandal here is a little more interesting. In 1873, the Keoughs moved from Dover Township to Sombre Township, and they ended up on the ward line. And again, that's the link for searching the abstracts, the land abstracts, and you know, those are important because if you can get certain information off those, there are some places, you know, like the Lambton Archives in Wyoming, where they will help you find, you know, the will or the document that goes with the event that goes on there. So it's something that you should do and go on and search if you know, especially if you know where your family lived. One drawback of that site, though, is it's only available during their hours. I've never been able to access it outside their hours, but it is something to look at. In 1883, my great aunt Kate Anderson, so my great grandparents, their daughter, she was born the 17th of February, 1883. She was born to Alexander Anderson and to Annie Keough. Now, if you notice my next line there, 1883, my great grandparents, Alexander Anderson and Annie Keough, are married the 24th of February, 1883. So this was a shotgun wedding. In fact, the lore in our family, passed on in my family, is that the wedding gift was to have land burned or a barn burned, depending on who you were talking to. And that was, you know, to say, welcome to the family, to Alexander Anderson. And, you know, he got her pregnant, and Aunt Kate was the child that was born, and they were married 1 week after. Well, that didn't sit well with Bridget Keough. And we knew this. You know, you had a Protestant marrying a Catholic, that's a problem. And even though it's not unheard of, in fact, you know, both my dad's grandparents are Protestant Catholic marriages. The Anderson Keough situation was a Protestant marrying a Catholic, you know, in this case Irish Catholic. And my dad's other grandparents, you have a Protestant, Percy Will marrying Annie Bro, and Annie was a French Catholic. So it wasn't unheard of back then, but it didn't sit well with the Keoughs, because this is what Bridget did. And we knew this. This is one thing we did know. Bridget absconded with the new baby, took her all the way to Port Lambton, and had her baptized by the priest at Sacred Heart. Now, if you notice, there's only one sponsor. It's Bridget Duffy. And obviously, John must not have felt the same way his wife did. And my family must not have been too pleased, because shortly after this, there's crisis in the Kio home. Between 1883 and 1884, and this is the secret no one ever told us, Bridget and John Keough separated. Now, I had found in the census that John Keough was living with the Andersons, and I had thought for a long time that Bridget had died, or that she was visiting someone and got missed in the census, which can happen. But this is actually what happened. They separated. November 13, 1884, Bridget sued John Keough for alimony and won. Now, I was surprised by that. A family member of mine actually had this document. I've not been unable to find this document. However, I've transcribed it. And here are some of the things that were found on it. The 13th day of November 1884, the plaintiff is entitled to a proper allowance by way of alimony from this state, so long as the said plaintiff shall continue to live separate and apart from the defendant. The plaintiff shall live separate and apart from the defendant, and she's to get alimony. So Bridget sued for alimony and won, and this is 1884. And this shocked me because you never hear about this kind of thing. Well, it even got as far as the papers. I found this in Canadiana, and as I've said before, there are areas that you need to look at for your ancestors. Canadiana.ca is one of those areas. Especially if you're looking for early ancestors in their heritage section, you just type in the search there, various forms of the name, and it'll bring up places to look. Now, sometimes it's hard to work with because it'll tag your ancestor's name, and then it may really mess it up. But it is a wonderful place to look. Well, I was able to find, typing the Keoughs in, I was able to find this from the Watford paper, The Guide Advocate from 1887. And it talks about Keough versus Keough and an action to set aside a conveyance, a judgment for the plaintiff, and basically, Bridget won again against John. And to show you what she won, September 15th, 1888, there was an order to vacate 100 acres of land in concession 8, lot 2, and 30 acres of land in concession 6, lot 8 in Sombra. And this action was so that Bridget would get half the farms. John Keough had a 200 long acre farm, and she got half of it. He had this other land, she got half of it. But this time she didn't just sue John, she also sued her daughter, my great-grandmother, Annie Anderson, and also the Lambton loan, which ultimately is now in Wallaceburg, the Scotiabank, but she sued them and she won. And this is a copy of the document. This was provided to me through the Lambton archives. And again, as you know, I found it on the land document, and I have a contact at the Lambton archives, and that contact, the friends of mine, found it for me, and it was an amazing find. So she wins. She dies on her half of the land, according to the death registry, and our family never talked about it. So you have a scandal in the family. Now I'd like to talk about two surprises. The first surprise is the maiden name and parentage of Sarah, the wife of Edward Wyatt Turner, who was a loyalist. These are my ancestors. They were in Kent County. Actually, they were in Kent County, Essex County, Kent County. They kind of moved around. But Edward Wyatt Turner was a loyalist who had joined Butler's Rangers. He was from Pennsylvania. Him and his father had joined, and after the Revolution, they were in Niagara, and then they were in Detroit for a little while, and ultimately received their land grant in Chatham Township. And one of the problems we've always had is what was the maiden name of his wife. We knew her name was Sarah, but we could never figure out what her maiden name was. So here's the problem. Years ago, when I was younger and just starting out in genealogy, I shared with some people a theory I had. that perhaps she was Sarah Millard, the daughter of a loyalist by the name of Thomas Millard and his wife, Mary Fuller. There was a little circumstantial evidence, you know, if you looked at the early censuses, you know, that they kept back in the 1780s, you know, in Niagara when they were determining who would get rations and things like that. They would list the family names, and near the Turners in Niagara were the Millards, and you know the ages were similar. You know, I thought, well, maybe this woman was you know Sarah, wife of Edward Wyatt Turner. The problem with that is I never, you know, it was always just a theory, and when I shared it with people, I always told them it was just a theory. Problem with telling people it's a theory is all of a sudden it becomes embedded in their trees. And with no real evidence, people just ran with it. If you look at Ancestry, Ancestry's full of, you know, statements that, you know, Sarah's the daughter of Thomas Millard and Mary Fuller. Well, sadly, that's wrong. The breakthrough came with the heir and devisee records and from the commission. And I really need to credit Lorene McGinnis Schultz. She runs the Olive Tree Genealogy, and she has done a fantastic job, you know, doing a blog, sharing stuff every once in a while. And she shared once about, you know, her going through and sort of sorting out the heir and devisee records. And that got me thinking, you know, I should look at those records. I should really look at those. Well, they're on Canadiana.ca, and they, again, are records you need to look at, especially if you have early ancestors in the area. They have a search thing. Like I said, sometimes it's glitchy, sometimes the tags aren't right, but you will find amazing things. And here's what I found. In the heir and devisee records of the commission on Canadiana.ca, I found on this document. Now there's more pages to this document, but this document in particular shares this little detail. This is Edward Wyatt Turner, and Edward Wyatt Turner is talking about his wife. He makes oath and says that Sarah Turner was reputed to be the only child of the said Michael Helms. It blew my mind. Like right in front of me was her father's name listed. Like I was just blown away by this. This was an amazing document that in dealing with a piece of land, Edward Wyatt Turner is now telling the commission who his wife's parents or father is. Here's another part of it. Michael Helms. Now, Edward Wyatt Turner here is telling us what Michael Helms used to say. So Michael Helms repeats that the above mentioned Sarah Turner was his only child. In that same document, Michael Helms, late, you know, of the said district, basically he died in 1895. I'm just going to summarize this one, and he died intestate. So on that one page are a number of statements about her being his only child, and then where he lived, Harwich, in the said district, and that he died in 1795, and that he died intestate. Then on another page, this time we have a statement that Sarah Turner, the wife of Edward Turner, late of the township of Chatham in the district, or actually in the Western District, yeoman, the daughter of Michael Helms, late of Harwich, in the said Western District, yeoman, deceased, she's going to make a claim for his land. And that land is a lot number 22 in the second concession of the said township of Chatham, containing 200 acres. As the only child and heir at law of the said Michael Helms, deceased. Now that blows away the Sarah Millard theory that establishes that at the date that she is the wife of Edward Turner, and that she is the only child of Michael Helms. And as far as I can tell by all the records joined together, she seems to be the only wife of Edward Turner. Now, there is a slight possibility he could have married someone else first, but most of his children belong to her. And that'll come up in a couple other documents. I also found out her mother's first name. I haven't figured out her mother's last name yet. On this document here, also found in the heir and devisees, you'll notice the land being sold to a Jacob Miracle, and the land belonged to a woman by the name of Mary Elms. Now, this page, which is out of the land books, which is also found on the Canadiana site, actually has her name clearly stated and the township and everything in Harwich. And again, her selling this land. And again, it's Mary Elms, but it's Helms. And, you know, she's the one selling this land. Again, another document, again, going back to the heir and devisees, also mentioning that, and her name being Mary Elms. And then you have this document, which again states it. If you look in the middle of this band here, you'll see her name again. So I was able to find not only her father's name, which is Michael Helms, but I was also able to find the mother's first name, Mary, which we never had. And it was an amazing surprise. So who were they? Who were Michael and Mary Helms? Well, they're possibly loyalists. And the reason I say that, if in the Upper Canada land petitions, which are at the archives, at the Library and Archives in Ottawa, the main government site, Edward Turner had a petition in there for land. And Edward Turner was a colorful character. In one case, he was trying to sell his land, and in the process of selling his land, he tried to renege on it. Things must have turned out a little better for him, or something. And when he tried to renege, something bizarre happened. He lost the land, and he also went to prison for not being able to pay the debt to the lawyer. And his wife, Sarah, had to give up her land to get him out of prison. And interestingly, he refers to his wife in this petition as a loyalist. So perhaps they were loyalists. This is somewhat confirmed in the township papers. Again, like I said, go through the township papers, go concession and lot until you find your family one, and perhaps you might find a document like this. And in this document, the land's being the land that once belonged to Michael Helms is being dealt with, and it's a period after a couple generations after Michael, and now we're looking at grandkids of Michael, and this is their testimony. So we have Edward Wyatt Turner Jr., and who is now talking. So this is Edward Wyatt Turner and Sarah Helms's son, commonly called Wyatt Turner. And in 1851, the memorialist purchased from Wyatt Turner, heir at law and grandson of the late Michael Helms, a UE loyalist, a loyalist, all the right and title to lot number 23 in the second concession of the township of Harwich, 200 acres. Again, in the township papers, we have again a reference again to Edward Wyatt Turner, and you actually have his signature here. Please let me know if the deed for number 23 of the second concession of the township of Harwich bounded on the River Thames, located by Michael Helms, a UE loyalist, is in the office as Edward Wyatt Turner makes claim to that lot as grandson and heir at law of the said Michael Helms, UEL. Again, in the township papers, you have another statement, again, about from Edward Wyatt Turner. You know, I don't want to belabor the point, but he is the grandson and heir at law of Michael Helms of Harwich in the said district. But was he a loyalist? And that's a question I have to answer, and where our research is now at, because even the people who are dealing with this ask the question, was he a loyalist? And if you look at the bottom part there, it says in these township papers, let me know whether there is an order in council for Michael Helms as a UEL. So they want to know whether he was a loyalist. And that question is going to be there. Was he a loyalist? I was able to find a statement about his land. I've never found his petition. I've never found his daughter's petition. This is the land board books. Again, you can find these at Canadiana. Lot number 22, second concession, second township, north side of the River Thames, to Michael Helms, he having taken the oath of fidelity and allegiance. And it doesn't say he's a loyalist. So did he settle there? Was he a Hessian soldier? You know, but he was given 200 acres. And so he got 200 acres, but there's no petition. I can't find a petition. Here it is in print form. This happened in 1793. And again, it says basically the same thing, except in printed out form. So in the end, who was Michael Helms and Mary Helms? Were they loyalists? I'm at this point very excited just to have the surprise of being able to find Sarah's parents and you know, her maiden name. We can finally put to rest. Now, getting people on Ancestry to change their trees is going to be quite a challenge. I've put some notes out there, but it's up to them to find the data. Surprise number 2, again, dealing with parentage. This time it's Sarah, wife of Jesse Rubel. Now, the Rubels were early Kent settlers, and James Rubel married Fanny or Frances Bedford. She was the daughter of Robert Bedford and Elizabeth Edwards. A number of, I know, Kent OGS people have some connections to those families, and they're my ancestors, and you know, fairly well researched this family. And so James B. Rubel, his parents were Jesse Rubel and a woman by the name of Sarah. Now, James Rubel was born 1790 in Frederick County, Virginia, to Jesse Rubel and to Sarah, and among other children. And they ultimately would move to Ohio, and where Jesse would die in 1804, and his wife around 1825. And and then branch out from there. And James would go to Michigan and then cross into Ontario. He and Fanny Bedford had a family. Somewhere along the way, they split. James went back to Michigan, married another woman in Michigan, Phoebe LaFontaine, whose married name was Crawford, and he finished his days there. Fanny remained in Ontario. So there are my ancestors, and the surprise that I'm going to find is about James's mother's maiden name. In almost every ancestry genealogy, and if you go on Ancestry and you start looking, Sarah's maiden name is given as Pugh. And the irony of that is Jesse Rubel's mother's name was Elizabeth Pugh. So it's said that he married his first cousin. This was kind of backed up in a few genealogies, a biography. These were the sources that people were citing. And for their son, Field and Rubel especially, who went down to Texas, he in the biography about him, they mentioned that Sarah was a Pugh. Well, was she? When I was researching my family, I came across an interesting thing. Like James B. Rubel, that B must have meant something, must have represented something. And then I noticed he named a son after himself, and he named that son James Burnett Rubel. And here I have the death record for James Burnett Rubel, and the age at which he died. And you'll notice that his middle name is spelled right out. So that got me thinking, people always name family members, especially with a last name, usually after a relative, and unless it's like a president or something like that, or some famous person. And so why did James name him Burnett or Barnett, and why does James have a B in his name? Well, there were some circumstantial clues that started me thinking, James B. Rubel had an older brother named Lewis, and that name didn't run in any generation prior in the Rubel family. So that got me thinking, well, why is Lewis in there? Why is it being passed down in my family? That also got me thinking that perhaps I needed to start looking for a James Barnett or a Lewis Barnett. And so I did some research online, and Google is your friend, and I like to type into Google as often as I can some genealogical names, see what comes up, and this came up. I found an obscure reference in a legal document, or to a legal document in a book called the Doster Genealogy. Now, the Doster Genealogy really doesn't have anything to do with the Rubels except this. In one little spot, there's this indenture, and it's all spelt wrong. And that really threw me off. The indenture, it says William Doster, his wife Margaret, Lewis Barnett, and Mary B. White, his wife, and Sarah Rubel, widow of Jeff S., which is actually, when I saw the original document, is actually Jesse, of Jefferson County, Ohio, children and heirs at law of Lewis Barnard Morrow and David Barnett. Well, whoever did this got it all wrong, but this got me thinking and going, I need to find that document. And there's another statement to it again in 1805 about it. So I went looking for the document, and I looked and I looked, and then one day I had a breakthrough. In the Chancery records of Virginia, I started Googling in Virginia records, and I found this thing called the Chancery records in Virginia. And I knew that my ancestor had been born in Virginia. So I Googled in there Rubel, and it brought up a number of things, some of the Rubel land documents, and then there was a court document. And that court document is related to this indenture. There's a legal case regarding land. And, you know, it's funny how you find out your ancestors' names, not always in a will, but you can find them in land documents or court cases. And a legal case regarding the land, which was purchased by Louis Barnett, also known as Louis Bernard Sarin. Now, you notice they had Morrow on there. Well, this is his actual name, Louis Bernard Sarin. This Mordecai Walker, he attempted to take the land, Louis's land, multiple times between 1791 and 1802. In fact, he even planned to appeal, you know, to the courts again, you know, trying to get the land. Ultimately, as far as I know, he lost every time. And he had no basis for going after the land, but he did. He kept trying. So at the government site, the Chancery records are on there. They're online. And here's what I found. So Louis Barnett died in 1790. Mordecai Walker started his legal actions against Louis actually prior to 1790. And then once Louis was dead, he started them again. And so this time he's suing Louis's heirs. And it's in this is what I found in the document. The document's huge. And these are just some of the pages. The legal right for this land, so as aforesaid obtained, descended to Louis Barnett, his son, and to Jesse Rubel and Sarah, his wife, and to William Doster and Margaret, his wife. So right there in the document, we're being told that Louis Barnett's 3 children are Louis Barnett, Sarah Barnett, and Margaret Barnett. Notice on that page 3 says Sarah and Margaret are also children of the said Louis Barnett deceased, all of whom your order prays, and then it goes on. Again, it says, partway into this document, as aforesaid obtained, descended to Louis Barnett, his son, and to Jesse Rubel and Sarah, his wife, and to William Doster and Margaret, his wife, which said Sarah and Margaret are also children of the said Louis Barnett deceased. And that's on page 8. And again, you find that it's statement that their father, who died in 1790, was Louis Barnett, now deceased. I also found the statement in another record, not actually laid out, but the surprise was I was able to find that Sarah's maiden name, so James Rubel, who was a settler in Kent County, his mother's maiden name, who people had wrong in their trees as Sarah Pugh, his mother was really Sarah Barnett, and she was the daughter of Louis Barnett. And ironically, if you remember, it says AKA, known as Louis Bernard Sarin. That family may well have been Jewish. Louis Barnett, the son, is listed as the only Jewish member of the Masonic Lodge in Winchester, Frederick County, Virginia. So they may have been Jewish, and that's why Louis had 2 names. He went by Barnett and also by Bernard Sarin. So I was amazed. You can find these surprises. You run into these scandals, and I find it amazing. I hope you can find the records. I would encourage you to go on Family Search. I would encourage you to go on, to look things up and browse through records, the township papers. I would encourage you to go on Canadiana and go through the records on Canadiana. Anyway, I just wanted to share some of my surprises.
Wow, that was a lot of information. I was busy writing things down because I have some Halletts in my family tree from England. And now I know it maybe is not direct to you and they're not direct to me, but maybe you and I should chat later. I'll send you an email.
There we go.
And your suggestion or comments about, using Canadiana. It is a wonderful site. I think a lot of people don't know it exists. It's underused. It's free, folks. Yeah. So it's a great site. The Township Papers as well, another free site. You mentioned Google everything. That's one of the things I tell everybody too, another free site. So yeah, there's lots of great stuff out there that take you down those rabbit holes. So get your coffee ready and your fuzzy slippers and check out these websites. So Elizabeth, are there any questions?
I do not see any questions as yet. So I came up with, when you mentioned, Brian, the letters of administration, when you use your family search, do you search under the resource for your names? Or just put in the names and then come up with where what it pulls from?
I've done a couple of different ways. Family search is it can be easy to use and it can be really hard to use. Family search, if you're looking for general information and some minor things, search under the records. However, in finding the letters of administration and the letters of guardianship and probate records and things like that, I actually went on family search and looked at the locales. So I went to New York State on their information, and under New York State, they list all the counties and then under the counties, you can find various records that are available. Some are on paid sites, but many they have themselves, and many of them are available if you signed up for a membership with Family Search. You can search them online. Now some you can't. You have to go to the Family Center, but you can look at them online, and many of them are browse only. So you find the date, you find if it's a probate record, you find on there that there might be an index that was made by the state itself or the county itself, and then you use that to then find the page in the document. It's a lot of work, but it's worth looking through, and that's how we found those probate records. We actually stumbled across them, basically.
Fantastic. Thank you. I do have a comment from Mary Lou Sinek. Great use of resources, Brian. Thank you very much. Going back to Stephen Hallett, aka George Lampman, have you been in touch through DNA with any descendants of his first family in the U.S.?
Yes, we have. We've made contact with some of the Halletts. None direct, like no face-to-face things. It's more been through messaging through Ancestry and places like that. It probably would have come as a surprise to some of them that all of a sudden there's these Lampmans, connecting. We've been very careful, although it's far enough back that it's not going to cause a lot of waves. And the Hallett family, some of them were colorful themselves. One of the sons of Stephen, well, maybe because he didn't have his father around, went out west and got involved in some of the shady stuff out west, and so some colorful things. But yeah, we've been in contact a little bit with some of them.
You also pointed out another good tip about still utilizing those, those brick and mortar buildings. You mentioned the archives in Wyoming. So they're still the folks that have, you know, lots of great stuff. Not everything is digitized, not everything's online yet.
Nope.
So still supporting those local, like I say, libraries, archives, museums, genealogy societies. Those are also great repositories where there's little tidbits tucked away as well. So you make a good point about using those as well.
Well, the if in starting genealogy anywhere, at any point, I always started with the public library. Newspapers are some of the greatest resources at the beginning. You know, talking to your family, things like that. The OGS, you know, I love going into that library in Chatham. It's a fantastic place, and a lot of records there. Some you can't get anywhere else, and you know, definitely the brick and mortar places are important. And the archives, like that pension is not online for Alan Mclean. I stumbled across the fact there was a pension. So I contacted the archives and they found the pension for me. Now it cost me, you know, for them to send it to me, but it's an important document to me. And, you know, even though he slipped on the ice and died an embarrassing way, but anyway, it's still, you know, paper document.
I'm not seeing any other comments or questions at this moment.
Either I bored them and they're all watching TV, or
I don't think so. So, Brian, before we started tonight, you mentioned that you had a cousin that was joining us, and I see that she's still on. I didn't know if you wanted to just, you know, have a shout out to B.
Yeah, B and Fred, I love you very much, and I'm glad you're watching.
And we loved you too, and thank you so much. It was very interesting, as always. Okay, you take care.
You take care too.
That's great. And they're joining from Michigan, I think you said, right?
Correct. Yes.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Appreciate being here. Thank you.
Okay, well, if there's no further questions, we won't keep people too much longer on their Friday night.
Kathleen just came in.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Kathleen just said thank you. Thank you very much. That was so interesting, she said.
Great. So just a reminder, we don't have any presentations in December or January. We're looking at something for February 2022. But don't forget about the Family Tree Maker special event that we're going to be having on October the 23rd. So right after this presentation, we'll take down the information off of our website and we'll put the information for this event up. So November the 23rd from 2 till 4 p.m. The registration link will be there. And whether you're an experienced Family Tree Maker user, brand new to it, not even new to it at all, and just want to learn some more about it, make sure you come and join us. It's open to everyone and it's free. So again, Brian, thank you so much. That was fantastic. I knew it would be. And we appreciate your time with us this Friday night.
Well, thank you. I love sharing about my family.
It's wonderful. Okay, thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye now.